Welcome to Wining and Dining with Jim White. It's the program devoted to introducing you to the people who create the eats and drinks you love. And I'm going to introduce you to somebody who has brought some magnificent, simple, classical, elegant flavors back to Dallas. Real French cooking. I would imagine the kind of stuff that he grew up with. Bruno Davaillon is with us from Bullion. How are you, my friend?
I'm very good. Thank you. Good to see you.
Well, it's good to see you. It's always great when you can get a chef up early in the day, and because I know hard-working profession, late at night mostly.
It's not too early.
Yeah, good, good. Well, you look fresh and wide awake. Certainly years in the making almost. The transition seemed people were just waiting and waiting and waiting for you to open your new restaurant. But I understand, construction is not always an easy thing in the city of Dallas, and maybe especially downtown in a building that's being repurposed. But talk a little bit about what led you to open Bullion. And in the process, tell us a little bit about the restaurant, and we'll dance around and talk about your menu and just everything that's going on.
I mean, the process took longer than we thought, obviously. It came out, I was at the mansion back a few years ago, and I was ready to do something on my own. But, it's never, when you have an idea to do something and from that idea to materialize to something concrete, sometimes it does, sometimes it never does. And it just happened with somebody, with a good friend of mine, which is I'm sure you know her, Sharon H.
Yes, yes.
And she's the one basically who introduced me to my partner now, the Thomas and Georgina, and everything started like this. And it took us, probably when we start talking to the opening of the restaurant, 3 years.
Wow.
But 18 months of those period of time was construction. And obviously when they say, it's going to take you maybe a year to do the restaurants, it took us almost double. So
yes.
That's what it is. It was a longer process because you had to build from there was nothing there, so we had to build everything from scratch and from an existing building, the former below building, and like they say, when you want to take back something old and you want to make it new, it just take longer.
Well, you did a magnificent job. I'm not sure you'll have to tell us who did the design work and who you worked on. But folks, if you haven't seen Bullion downtown in the old Below building, just look for this marvelous, beautiful, shining hunk of gold, tons of gold all around, and that's sort of that's the facade, the showcase to the building. And of course, it does mean Bullion, but the name really has more than one meaning.
Yeah, actually, to find a restaurant name is a little tricky sometimes.
Yeah.
To find the right name or the name we're gonna, have the most meaning or whatever connection we have with the name, which we looked for months, at the beginning, because until you see the design and you have a visual of what it's gonna be, you have some name in mind. It's like when you see the first design, you say, this name is not gonna work with that type of shape and building and then color, everything. So the name came actually from Thomas, my partner, who was spearheading some in a meeting one day, and he said, what about Bullion? Because this former financier from Louis XIV was so we started to Google things, and his name was Claude de Bullion, and he's the one who invented the gold coin.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts, and after that, now the Bullion name is used in the gold industry, for measure everything. So and we're like, okay, this is gonna be kind of an upside shape of a bouillon and gold bouillon. So there's a French connection and the shape aspect. So we're like, that could work, and we stuck with that, and that was it.
All right, and it does seem to work. And
I mean, for me, and I like the. I don't like there's a lot of restaurants now like the compose and very long name restaurant like such and such, and for me, for some design and for some concept and it works. But for us, I was looking for a one word name, so that worked well.
And it seems to fit very, very well because since I brought it up, why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about the design process and who you worked with on that? Because it's a stunning, it's your reveal shot, if you will, as they say in the film business, is stunning. But when you come inside, it's so tasteful yet elegant, yet classy, yet comfortable, and
Yeah, we use Thomas and Georgina, our partner. They go a lot. They have offices in London, England,
Mhm.
and this design firm named Martin Brzezinski. They do a lot of design in London and now all over because it's pretty hot right now everywhere. And we went to London once to see what the restaurant he had designed, and what I liked about his design is like some of the design you go to a restaurant and it's like, yeah, in 2-3 years it's gonna be done because they're gonna move to something else. And when it's too modern or too intricate, it isn't. In my opinion, it doesn't age well. And all his restaurants age really well because he has like they have some kind of a patina that he kept some kind of old school but add some new equipment. But they age, all of them that I see in London. And the Scots and all this restaurant, I've been there for 15-20 years. He just did a redo of the Ivy in London and Caprice and all this restaurant, and they look, beautiful. And I was like, that could work for us for sure, and that's how we start the whole process.
it's a very lively place. Well, it's a brasserie, is it not?
Yeah,
Is this your vision of
the vision when we started? There was I was going to even more casual.
Mm-hmm.
But after, with the location of the building and the way the shape of the building was already existing, the plan, because the shape was Genzer architect who put the shape together. And after we had to work with that shape, so I was like, at first I was talking about maybe do like a very casual bistro, but that will not have worked with that shape and the whole thing. So my mind changed. We talk about some kind of in my mind it's like a French modern brasserie kind of. It's still the vibe that I want to project in the cooking, in the food, and the plates, and the menu.
Describe that for people. I mean, people who are, well-traveled and spend a lot of time in France, I mean, they immediately connect to the thought of a brasserie and what it is. But maybe just, kind of take just through your food, maybe through examples of what you're doing so they begin to go, oh, okay, I get it now.
No, we have, I'm going back to more classical, but sometimes when you say classical and modern, it's just a classification of things. Oh, classic, it's passé, whatever. But I mean, also what's happening in the modern cooking has been coming from the classic basis.
Exactly.
If
all cooking is French based.
And so there's a movement in France. When you go in Paris, I pretty much in a big city in France that you can eat really well now for less money and forgot the Michelin-starred rating because it costs you money to upkeep all of that. And that was my goal, to kind of bring back some kind of a classical form of a brasserie. We have the charcuterie, what we do in house, canard orange done, but a different way. But still, we have the stem.
I've had it. It's delightful.
Yeah, stem base flavor, but done a little lighter, a little more brighter, a little more acidic. Like people have changed the way they eat too. They like a little more acidic than they used to be. Less fat, less less grease. So this is, but still, the DNA of what I'm trying to do is still based on classical flavor and technique, French technique. So that's we have the gougere cheese puff that has been this recipe has been done for 250 years. I'm doing all the classical pâté rillette, pâté en croûte, which is a big moment revival right now. Like everybody is back to that. So that's for me it's a brasserie menu, and with a few twists in there. I have oysters on the menu. I'm serving caviar, but it's very eclectic. You can find for something to the cheaper and to a little more expensive, but I'm trying to stay in the frame where it's still affordable.
Are you finding that you've got different audiences coming over and sampling the restaurant for different things? I mean, maybe an early crowd that will come in for some of the, entree type things and the pâté en croûte and things like that, and then the dinner hour crowd, because we eat a lot earlier here than in Europe.
Yes, I mean it's we are where we're located. We have we have the crowd from the hotel nearby too, and but I mean it's the most surprising thing. I mean it's surprising, yes or no, because the restaurant the design has been really beautiful, and people have a tendency to stay with us a little longer than usual, because that I think it feels great to be in that room, and but yeah, we have more and more people eating at the bar, which is great. And they can have a little bite or samples of the menu, and it doesn't have to be the full menu. So that's we start to see that more and more right now, actually, especially in the bar area and lunch.
That's great. I should have checked this. If I'd have done my research properly, I would have. But are you open for lunch as well as dinner?
Yes.
Okay.
We are open for lunch Monday through Friday.
Okay, that's great. And so you've really got two different audiences that come and sample.
Yeah, especially for lunch. I mean, it's more like obviously business crowd around, and offices and around where we are. And dinner is a different crowd. It's coming from everywhere. We have a lot of people coming from the suburb, Plano, and up north, coming down to see what we're doing, and that's a good amount of French people too.
Well, I was going to say I've done a lot of work with the French American Chamber of Commerce, and there are a lot of French-based businesses here, a lot of multinational companies
that's
here.
True.
So a lot of expats coming in.
All of those companies, I've seen them already in one form or another. Yes, and there's more. I mean, that's because they can see what I'm doing is really real French. There's no. I'm using obviously Texas produce or local, but it's still very French, and this is something they could find maybe in Paris or in New York restaurants. So that's why it's been a little different for and I didn't know there was that many French people actually in the area, because it's been a good crowd actually.
Oh, that's good. That's delightful. We'll talk a little bit about your training. Now you're from the Loire Valley,
yes.
Am I correct? Talk a little bit about your upbringing there and how that's influenced you.
I mean, I'm coming from all my family pretty much they were farmers. A lot of uncles, and they have multiple farms. Mainly, it was pretty diverse between the wheat growing. We don't do corn much in France. It's more a American thing. But remember what took me the most back there. That was one of my grand aunts at a farm, and that's where because she was a great coach. She passed 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. And she was I mean, for me it's funny because everybody is like right now like farm to table, and it's been like this for many years already, but and you don't appreciate the luxury of having that kind of environment until you get older, because it was normal for me to go with my parents on Sundays and have a very nice long lunch, and you have the milk from the farm, everything was from the garden over there, and my aunts were doing like all the dough for the tarts and on that lunch, and the butter she was making the butter was from their milk over there, the cream. They were doing their goat cheese. They were trying to do some wine, not very good actually. I didn't drink the wine back then, but it was more like a table wine. So it was like they had like everything on the spot, but it was like a natural thing for me to experience, because I thought there was like this everywhere. But now when we look back, it was a real luxury actually.
When did you know you wanted to become a chef and get involved professionally?
I think it was around 10 to 12-year-old, because I remember I always liked to the baking part of what she was doing, all this dessert and everything, and that's how I started to kind of be more in the kitchen and look, not necessarily helper, but the smells. I remember the smells of that kitchen. And one thing that I vividly remember, and obviously now it's hard to find because it's everything has to be pasteurized now, and it's the first time when you get the milk from the cow, you boil it in the pan, and you have this really thick cream on top, and that flavor and texture, it's still vividly in my mind.
How about that?
Yeah, it's just smells, taste, flavor. That's what I remember of the.
Where did you take it from there? Did you train? You trained in Paris, correct?
So yeah, I mean, I went to Paris at one point, but I worked in a small restaurant in the Loire Valley to start.
Mm-hmm.
So we do. School was I mean, I knew I was going to try to become a chef, but I didn't know how the process. And school was not. I mean, I was good at certain things at school, but and I didn't want to go too much to school. So in France, we have the apprenticeship that worked well for a lot of craft work and everything. So what we do is you spend 2 weeks at the restaurant and 2 weeks at the school, a culinary school too. It's like mixed on 50% time. And that's how I started for 2 years like this, and at a small restaurant in outside where my parents were living. And that person, that the chef, that I had at the time, I said, if you really want to, get to the next level, you have to go to Paris. There's no.
Just gotta go.
There's other awesome restaurant in France that you can go, but if you any other connection in Paris, that's how I got to go to Paris, and after I start to work in a regular restaurant, and that's how you build a resume. I mean, the old-fashioned way. I mean, now it's still too. If you want in the US, if you want to build a good resume, you have to go and where the best chef work and what you gotta see the most, and you're gonna take the most of the chef and learn the most. That's how you do.
Well, I've heard many people say generally the first 6 months to a year is unteaching the things that were taught at school when young chefs come into a restaurant.
Well, here in the US, the culinary school are totally different that we do in France and Europe. And yes, I mean, it's just a school environment is different than a real kitchen. So for a lot of people, it's a wake up call when you arrive in the real kitchen. It's like, it's go faster. It's everything is has to be more organized. Everything has to be it's a little different. But the people who have the drive really adapt pretty well and fast.
A lot of people have and it's been reinforced, have this stereotypical vision of the chefs who shout at their workers. You don't strike me as a shouter.
It's interesting because I mean I worked in kitchen with chefs. I'm an extremely talented chef, but for them they were replicating the way they were being taught and trained. So for a lot of chefs, it was like we know only one way. It's this way. And it's like military style, in your face.
Throwing pans.
Yes, some of them, yeah, but not. I mean, but for me, this is not in my character anyway. But but even when I was younger, I was go against my nature to replicate that because I thought this is the only way we're gonna accomplish it after result. But I figured out very well. Okay, let's be myself, and there's a lot that can be done this way. Training show the craftsmanship that you learn a different way and different approach, and and the result it's been you can achieve that too. It's a different approach with the same result, but it's working. But yeah, but less and less you can generation of worker in the kitchen that's evolved. The younger generation, you cannot work them the way maybe 15, 20 years ago you were working with it's just that's what it is. You have to adjust and work with the new generation and make them understand the same thing, the same principle that you have to follow, but there's a different way to achieve that.
It's all about respect, like Aretha Franklin.
That's true. And for me, you obtain the respect by showing everything. For me, I don't hide anything in my kitchen. You can have. I'm not gonna. A lot of the older chefs, they were giving recipes. For me, it's like I will give everything. It's not a problem, and because I believe that the more you give, the better for your team first, and to improve people. That it's That's the best way to do it in my mind. Or the chef.
I think it reflects in the food and service too.
Yes. And yeah, it's just it's the more and more, I remember there was a friend of mine that I can consider my mentor back then. When I worked with him in Brittany and Normandy. It's like the first 10 years of what you do in the cooking. You learn the food. You do what you think to really learn your craft. And after that, they say. So he was telling me, it's like, you're gonna learn the food, and after that you're gonna understand the food. And that's very different.
Indeed it is.
Yeah.
So what brought you to the United States? Who lured you here? I know about your background in Las Vegas with Alain Ducasse, but surely did you jump from Paris to...
No, that could have been possible with that project. No. So I arrived almost more than 20 years ago in New York, actually. So it was an interesting setup. So I was chef de cuisine in the very famous hotel restaurant in Normandy, in Honfleur, next to Deauville area. I mean, beautiful. A lot of American know Deauville because we have the film festival in Deauville every summer. But it's Honfleur. It's a beautiful real fisherman town. Maybe 10 miles outside of Deauville over there, and so this hotel restaurant is beautiful. It's been there for, I don't know, 50, 60 years now. I met this family in the summertime for like 4 or 5 years, and they were coming American, and they offered me to, at one point they said, we're looking for a chef for our house and outside of New York, and will you be in? The first they asked me if I knew somebody, if it would be interesting to. I said, I don't know anybody. I can pass the word out and let you know. And they came back to me, or one of their assistant came back to me 6 months later. They said, we still didn't find the right person there. What about are you been interested yourself to see what it could be? And at the point that I did like 5 or 6 years at that restaurant, I was like, I'm ready to do something else, and I was open. I always had some kind of I like to travel. I was in London before. I spent a year and a half in London at a very good restaurant as well. So my mind was like, okay, I would like to travel. And so that's how I arrived in the US with being a private chef. So it's very different, totally different a job. I did that for I think 2 years, but after that I was like, I need to get back in the real kitchen.
Sure.
And that's how. And after I moved to California to open the first St. Regis hotel in LA just before it was around 2000, and after 2001 so that was not the previous time for hospitality business, and I moved to San Francisco after that to work at a very good restaurant, very nice restaurant, which doesn't exist anymore. It's called Boku Restaurant.
Yeah.
And that's how I got contact with Alain Ducasse for the Vegas project.
It was interesting. Talk a little bit about your time with Monsieur Ducasse.
So I was kind of if you know how the Ducasse group work, usually the way it was, like, you have to, there's a kind of a process, like they groom you in that group to become a chef in the organization. For me, it was really different. Because, I knew a lot of their chef that work with him. I never worked with him before in France. I had a lot of respect for what he was doing, and I was really recognized myself in the food he was doing at the time, because it was like a direct flavor, simple but great produce. So kind of what I was looking on my own doing, and so I was in San Francisco, and they contacted me through a person that was his former chef at Monaco at the Louis XV. Sylvain Portet was a chef at the Ritz-Carlton in San Francisco, and he was there he'd been there for like at least 15 years. Great chef, and that's how the connection happened. He came to talk to me because we were just a few blocks away in San Francisco, the two restaurants, and basically I become an executive chef for the group, for Lucas group, without going through the whole process. Usually you go to Monaco and you go and they groom you at the Louis 15 and they send you to the place, the Devil restaurant. So it's like they have a plan for you pretty much to if you want to stay in the company. But Mr. Lucas is a very smart man, obviously after what he accomplished for the past 30 years. And he understood like it was a 240 seats restaurant in Vegas. And he knew that if you bring somebody from France, that will not, you had to have a French chef obviously, but somebody who was already experienced in the US to try to combine both worlds as far as volume, organization, and everything. So that's how I got the job in Vegas. And I mean, I never thought I would go to work in Vegas.
Well, did you ever think you would go to work in Dallas, Texas?
No, that's true. That's true. And at the end, this is what happened in life. You just we just have to you have some opportunities that knock at your door. It's like either you take them or not. But it's so in Vegas, when I stayed there for over 5 years, and it was back in the years where Vegas were
rocking.
A little crazy, in a good way, because the business was pretty insane, but it was a good experience.
What did you think when these people from Rosewood contacted you and said, "Say, we need a chef at the mansion on Turtle Creek"?
So I got a contact from, he's not working with them anymore, but the Austrian VP of beverage back at the time, and I knew, because I knew there's a few places in Texas or even in the US. I mean, we only talk about the mansion on Turtle Creek. A lot of people know what that place is. Mm-hmm. So when they contact me, I was like, and again, so it's funny because what I got contact when after I was almost ready to move. It's like, no, that sounds interesting, and the funny part is like the chef I replaced was John, and
John Teaser.
Yeah, John Teaser. Well, he used to work. We used to work in the same building in Vegas, because when he was in Vegas, he was working for I forgot his name, the seafood restaurant chef.
No, he was just on the show. We didn't talk about Vegas too much.
It's gonna come back to me. I forgot. He was in New York, and after he moved to Vegas to open his seafood restaurant, and John was his chef there for all his restaurant. And so it was interesting. It was a funny fact. Okay, I'm gonna
Did you call John and did you know him? Did you say, "Hey John, should I take this gig?" Or?
I don't know if we talk. I'm not sure. I know we've been talking for many years. So it's like I don't know if we talk about the job, but I was like it's a solid company, and I like the hotel restaurant, and they were very nice to me. So I came and did a little try, and they were like, I think you're the one for the job, and that's how I was like, and then, like I said, I never think I'm gonna move to Texas or Dallas, but it's all about the opportunities, and I'm pretty open to everything.
You almost have to be. That's where opportunity comes.
Exactly.
So did you have in the back of your mind all the time this desire to open your own place? And is that what led you to...
Yes. But, it's for me, I was like, okay, that's, I want to open something, but I want to make sure that everything is fell in place too, And they did the restaurant business is hard enough by itself. Like, if you need to all the pieces has to put fall in place together to make sure that you can do something interesting and it's gonna sustain. Because for me, like opening a restaurant, I'm not here to open just for 1 or 2 years. I want this place to stay for a while. It's a challenge now, because all restaurant is like the chef life of a restaurant that now seems to be shorter and shorter and shorter. There's very few, even in town here. I mean, that stand the time, like 10 years plus, it's already an achievement for a restaurant these days.
Yeah.
There's just a few that I can accomplish that. I think it's, and when you like when they say that 3 years is the mark where before 3 years you're gonna fail or not, and that's true. The 3 years mark, it take time to establish what you want to do and solidify the crowd and everything, and your customer base and everything.
Are you thinking ahead already? Do you have a plan to open other concepts, or is one family-owned restaurant just?
No, I have plenty of other ideas. It's just again, it's like I just want to find this one. I want to make sure this one is well solidified, and I have a very good team in place right now. So it's a good sign. And yeah, I have other ideas, but I don't know how it's gonna shape up or yet. It's too early to say, but yeah, I'm gonna probably try to do something else. Yeah.
Oh, very interesting. And so you probably don't have a whole lot of time right now for activities outside of the restaurant. But what are some things that you do fill your time with?
No, the thing for me is like I had to almost force myself to try to not to work, and it's what it is. I'm working 6 days a week. We're closed on Sunday, which is that's closed Sunday. That's good. But I'm in a time now where my team is like really I have a solid team everywhere front and back. So I can probably start to kind of see outside of the kitchen what I need to get back to do some outdoor activities, yes.
Ah, okay. So hiking, biking, skiing.
Yeah, I mean, when I was young, I was biking a lot. Skiing, not too much because where I grew up, it was not really
Sure.
the area for. I love it, but that's it's not my forte. But yeah, biking, I like motorcycle, I like all this type of outdoor activities. So I need to get back to. And I knew when you open a restaurant, you're gonna be tied up for. It's like a year or two already. It's gonna be condensed, and you have to be present more. And that now, after we've been open for more than a year now, and I can see that now it start to click in a good places, and I can start to have a little more time for me.
Do you get back to France very often?
Usually once a year, not last year because the first of the opening, so I couldn't do it. But usually once a year. I'm trying to go to the summertime. Yeah,
well, that's a good time to go.
Yeah,
generally speaking. And then are there trips that you take? That I know Stephen Piles is famous for taking trips to research cuisine. And so it's a tax write-off.
Yeah, before we opened the restaurant, I went to New York. I went to London. I went back to France for we just had the Bocuse d'Or in Lyon last week. So every 2 years, but I went 2 years ago for the previous 2017 edition, because in the meantime they have the biggest food show in the world called the Sierra, and it's like you can find. As far as equipment, China, everything. It's amazing. Every 2 years in Lyon that they have this, and so I went back to France for that. So I went a little bit in Paris. So I tried to. So that was kind of my research, before the restaurant. For the lately I didn't go to any other place. I want to go back to probably San Francisco or Chicago to see what's cooking up there, because it's an interesting food scene.
Certainly two of my favorite food towns anywhere.
So it's amazing. I'm very aware of what the food scene is. I keep myself very aware. Through social media. This is now as a chef, you cannot, or a restaurant itself, you cannot escape social media. Social media is a new form that changed, I think, the way shape public relation. How do you want marketing? How do you want to position yourself as a restaurant or as a chef? It's been changing the game quite a bit, actually.
It has, and your food, thankfully, is very Instagram worthy. So
yeah, it is. It's interesting for me that I can see the transition, especially on the chef side. Is like, it's for me, it's a dangerous thing too, as far as for a young chef. There's so much available for a young chef that try to define what they want to do and what they find what they really is are inside of her. Like, okay, this is the cuisine I want to create. That the influence of there's so many out there. Like you can get very easily confused because there's so much. That's why, in my opinion, when I look at a lot of Instagram account, everything, and the food start to look a little bit the same. And a lot of because obviously people are influenced by what they see, so it's there's less and less kind of do your own thing without being influenced. And being influenced with, if you have a mentor and you learn how to cook something, I think it's one thing. But being influenced by just watching what others are doing, I think you dilute yourself too much as far as what you're supposed to do, or I mean, it's my opinion, but it's a different approach, I think.
Yeah.
For a lot of chefs.
Yeah. Perhaps they don't understand the food quite yet; they just see it.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true. Bruno, thank you so much for continuing to make Dallas one of my favorite restaurant towns too. And much continued success to you at Bullion. And I want to thank you for joining us today.
Oh, it was a pleasure to see you, and you're welcome to Bullion anytime.
Oh, indeed. And folks, you're welcome to Bullion anytime too. So thank you so much for joining us on Wining and Dining with Jim White. Remember, if anybody asks you what you're making for dinner, tell them reservations at Bullion, of course.